In the coastal city of Savannah, Georgia, known for its rich history and southern charm, the young woman's life, Eliza Harper, changed forever the day she gave birth to her twin daughters. The birth, which took place in a local hospital, was accompanied by great expectations from the family. Eliza and her husband, Caleb Harper, were overjoyed with the arrival of the girls, who came into the world after years of failed attempts to get pregnant. When the doctor finally announced that they were both healthy, relief filled the room. But something unexpected caught everyone's attention. The twins were radically different in appearance. The first, called Lillian, was born with fair skin, blonde hair and bright green eyes. The second, Amara, had black skin, curly hair and deep brown eyes. The room was momentarily silent until the doctor commented, "This is rare, but not impossible. It appears they have unique genetic characteristics." Caleb, holding both girls, just laughed. "They are perfect, no matter what they look like." As Eliza recovered in bed, holding her daughters, she felt a rush of unconditional love. For her, the differences between Lillian and Amara were a reminder of the beauty of life. But deep down, something began to worry her. "How is this possible?" he asked Caleb when they were alone in the room. "We are both white. Where did this trait in Amara come from?" Caleb shrugged. "Genetics is a funny thing. Maybe some distant trait in the family." In the days that followed, friends and family visited the twins, marveling at their differences. Many commented enthusiastically, but others looked on with curiosity or even skepticism. Eliza's mother, Martha Collins, was especially intrigued. As he held Amara on his lap, he said jokingly, "Well, honey, it looks like these girls have more history in their blood than we realized." Although she laughed, there was something in Martha's expression that suggested greater concern. Martha, a 65-year-old woman with an investigative and curious personality, had always been fascinated by her family's genealogy. She had spent years researching the origins of the Collinses and the Harpers, but had never found anything that explained something as surprising as the differences between Lillian and Amara. He decided he needed to dig deeper, especially now that his granddaughters were part of the puzzle. Meanwhile, Eliza and Caleb faced unexpected challenges. At the local playground, mothers commented on the girls, some kindly, others with uncomfortable insinuations. "Are they really sisters?" a woman asked once, looking at Amara as if she didn't belong to the family. Eliza always responded firmly, "Yes, they are twins. They came together and are unique in their own way." But inside, I felt the weight of judgment. The contrast between the twins became even more evident over time. While Lillian seemed to fit perfectly into the region's ideal of beauty, Amara caught attention for reasons that Eliza didn't know whether they were admiration or prejudice. She began to notice that even in the family circle, people treated girls differently, often without realizing it. It made her uncomfortable, but she still didn't know how to handle the situation. Martha, on the other hand, was determined to find answers. He spent nights combing through old records, family photos and letters saved decades ago. Her curiosity wasn't just scientific. It was personal. Something about the twins' situation lit a fire in her memory, as if there was a long-buried secret waiting to be uncovered. Although Eliza was trying to adapt to the new family dynamic, she began to notice that her mother was more reserved than usual. "Mom, is everything okay?" he asked one night, when Martha was silent for longer than usual. "Yes, dear," Martha replied, evasively. "I'm just thinking about the wonders of genetics." But Eliza knew there was something more. Determined to understand the origin of Amara's unique characteristics, Martha decided to expand her research. She began by visiting the Savannah Historical Archives, where she met an employee named Gerald Thompson, who was a local history enthusiast. "Gerald, I need your help," she said, as she entered the old building with a notebook in hand. "I want to find out more about our family, especially the Collins lineage." Gerald, always up for a challenge, smiled. "It would be a pleasure to help, Martha. Let's start wherever you think is best." While looking through old documents, Martha found a birth certificate that mentioned her grandmother's name, Evelyn Collins, but something felt off. Next to Evelyn's name was listed a surname that Martha had never seen before, Hargrove. "That's strange," she commented, pointing to the register. "My grandmother never mentioned anything about that surname." Gerald looked at the document and suggested, maybe it was her maiden name, or something related to a previous union. Intrigued, Martha decided to investigate more about the Hargroves. Further research revealed that the Hargrove family had a rich but also complicated history. They were known in Savannah in the early 20th century not only for their prosperity but also for their involvement in social conflicts. Many family members were descendants of African Americans who had risen economically but faced constant prejudice. Martha began to wonder if her family might have connections to this lineage. Meanwhile, Eliza faced new challenges with the twins. Amara, despite being a calm baby, began to react to certain situations differently than Lillian. When they visited friends, Amara seemed more sensitive to her surroundings, while Lillian explored everything with enthusiasm. Eliza began to wonder if the differences between them went beyond physical appearance. "It's like they come from completely different worlds," he commented to Caleb one night as he put the girls to bed. Martha, in turn, began to remember stories she had heard as a child but had never taken seriously. She remembered conversations between her grandmother Evelyn and other older family members that mentioned a secret about a country estate outside of Savannah. She decided to visit the now abandoned site to see if she could find anything that could shed light on the mystery of the twins. The property, called Rosewood Manor, was an old farm that had belonged to the Collins family. Despite being in ruins, Martha found a small locked box hidden in a wall. With Gerald's help, she managed to open the box, which contained a collection of old letters and photographs. One of the letters, dated 1903, mentioned a relationship between Evelyn Collins and a man named Joseph Hargrove, described as a forbidden love. The letters revealed a romance that had been kept secret for decades. Evelyn and Joseph were from different worlds. She, the daughter of a white farmer. He, an educated and influential black man in his community. Although deeply in love, they faced rejection from both their families and were forced to go their separate ways. Martha was moved to read about their struggle to keep their love alive amidst so much adversity. Upon returning home, Martha decided to share some of what she discovered with Eliza. "There is more to our story than we realize," she said, as she held up the cards. Eliza, although impressed, still didn't know how that explained Amara's characteristics. "What does this mean for us?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Martha answered truthfully, "It means we need to keep looking. Something tells me we haven't figured it all out yet." While mother and daughter reflected on the revelations, Amara and Lillian slept peacefully in their crib. The twins, so different in appearance, became a symbol of the complexity of a family history that was just beginning to emerge. For Eliza and Martha, the path ahead was uncertain, but they were determined to uncover the truth, no matter what it meant for their lives. The letters found in Rosewood Manor, they opened a portal to the past that Martha never imagined exploring. However, the more he investigated, the more he came across stories that threatened the image of the Collins family as a traditional and respectable lineage. Determined to seek answers, Martha called a meeting with her brothers, Jonathan and Ruth, who lived in neighboring cities. The two arrived at Martha's house with curiosity, but also with some skepticism. "Why so urgent, Martha?" asked Jonathan, a pragmatic man who preferred to avoid discussions about the past. Ruth, more open to the idea of revisiting family history, was direct. "You found something, didn't you? Is it about Eliza's girls?" Martha nodded, placing the letters and photographs on the table. "I discovered that our grandmother Evelyn had a connection to the Hargrove family. And it wasn't a simple friendship," she said, trying to gauge her brother's reactions. Ruth picked up one of the letters and began to read it, her eyes widening as she took in the words. "This is unbelievable," she said, almost whispering. Jonathan, on the other hand, looked uncomfortable. "Martha, these are old stories. Why dig up something that could cause pain to our family?" Martha firmly replied, "Because these stories are part of who we are. We cannot continue to ignore the past." Eliza, who was present at the meeting, was silent for a while, listening to her uncle's differing opinions. Finally, he interjected, "I understand this is difficult for all of us, but I need to know. Amara and Lillian deserve to know where they're coming from, and I can't give those answers without understanding what happened." His words created an atmosphere of reflection, but Jonathan remained reluctant. "This could change the way people see our family," he said. "Are you willing to take that risk?" Tensions rose when Ruth revealed something she had kept secret for years. "I remember hearing Grandma Evelyn mention Joseph Hargrove when I was a kid. She spoke of him with affection, but also with sadness. I asked her once who he was, and she said he was an important man in her life, but the world would never let them be together." The revelation brought a heavy silence to the room. It was the first time that the connection between Evelyn and the Hargroves had been confirmed by someone else in the family. As the conversation continued, Jonathan began to give in. "If this is true, what do we do now? We cannot change the past." Martha took advantage of the opening to suggest that they visit members of the Hargrove community, who still lived in Marshfield, a small town north of Savannah. "Maybe they can fill in the gaps," she said. "We need to hear the other side of the story." Eliza, who was torn between excitement and fear of the implications, agreed to the idea. "If it helps us understand Amara's roots, then it's worth it." However, the trip to Marshfield was a risk. The Collins family had always kept its distance from the racial controversies that marked the region, and this search for the past had the potential to reopen old wounds. Before ending the meeting, Martha looked at the brothers and said, "We're not just uncovering secrets. We are discovering who we really are. We cannot build a solid future for these girls without accepting what the past has to teach us." Despite disagreements, everyone agreed to move forward with the investigation, aware that the journey would be difficult, but necessary. The next morning, Martha, Eliza, and Ruth embarked on a trip to Marshfield, while Jonathan chose to stay behind, still hesitant to confront the truth. Marshfield was a small town with dirt streets and old houses that looked like they came from another time. Upon arrival, they were greeted by Anne Hargrove, an elderly woman who was one of the last direct descendants of the family, and was known in the community for preserving the Hargrove family history, and agreed to take them in after a brief exchange of letters with Martha, and welcomed them into her living room, where old photographs decorated the walls and genealogy books were stacked on the shelves. "So you are Collins," she said, with a smile that mixed curiosity and caution. "It's rare to see someone from that family around here." Martha, trying to break the ice, replied, "We are here because we want to understand our history. We believe our grandmother Evelyn had a connection to Joseph Hargrove," and was silent for a moment before responding. "Joseph was my great-uncle. He was always the pride of the family, but he also carried a sadness that he never fully revealed. We knew he loved someone he couldn't have, but he never told us who he was, and then showed a diary that had belonged to Joseph. Maybe this will help you understand better what happened." While leafing through the diary, Martha found several mentions of Evelyn. Joseph described their beauty, intelligence, and courage, but he also wrote about their constant fear of being discovered. "We met at night, under the stars, where no one could judge us," one excerpt read. "But the world separated us, and now I carry this emptiness with me." The words brought tears to Martha and Eliza's eyes, and also revealed that Joseph faced constant discrimination for his position as a successful black man at the time. He was a lawyer and activist, but he always felt that his love for Evelyn would be used against him, and explained, "They experienced a love that the world was not ready to accept." This information brought a new perspective to Martha and Eliza, who began to understand the profound impact of racism on their family history. Eliza, with tears in her eyes, asked, "Does this mean that part of us belongs in the Hargrove story?" and replied firmly, "Yes, and this is a story of resilience, love, and the fight for equality. Don't be ashamed of it. Embrace that part of who you are." Anne's words deeply touched Eliza, who felt a mixture of pride and responsibility as she thought about the implications for her daughters. Before leaving, Anne handed over a photo of Joseph and Evelyn together, taken secretly. The image was irrefutable proof of their love, despite the barriers they faced. Eliza held the photo reverently, feeling more connected to her roots than ever before. "Thank you for sharing this with us," she told Anne. "It means a lot." On the way back to Savannah, Martha reflected on everything they had learned. "We can't change what happened, but we can make sure the story is told with pride," she said. Eliza, looking at the photograph in her hands, replied, "And we can teach Lillian and Amara to embrace all parts of who they are. That is our responsibility now." For both of them, the trip to Marshfield was more than a search for answers. It was a reconnection with their roots and an opportunity to transform a family secret into a legacy of pride and learning for future generations. The trip to Marshfield brought not only answers, but also a new perspective for Eliza and Martha. When they returned to Savannah, they decided to share what they had discovered with Jonathan and other family members who were aware of the investigation. Martha organized a dinner at Eliza's house, inviting all her close relatives. Lillian and Amara were the center of attention, playing together on the living room floor while the adults gathered around the dining table. Jonathan arrived reluctantly, bringing with him an aura of skepticism. Ruth, on the other hand, seemed excited to hear more about the Hargrove story. Martha began by explaining the details of the forbidden romance between Evelyn and Joseph, showing the letters, diary, and photograph that and Hargrove had handed over. "This is more than a family secret," she said. "It's a part of our identity that has been buried for generations." Jonathan's reaction was immediate. "And what exactly do you expect us to do with this information?" he asked, his voice thick with disdain. "I don't see how reopening old wounds can help us in any way. We are Collins, and that's what matters." Ruth intervened, defending Martha. "This isn't about reopening wounds, Jonathan. It's about recognizing who we really are. To deny this part of our history is to deny our own roots." Eliza, who until then had remained silent, felt the need to take a stand. "It matters to me, Jonathan," she said firmly. "Amara and Lillian have a right to know where they come from. And no matter what you think, this is a story that deserves to be told." Her voice was shaking with emotion, but her words made it clear that she would not compromise on the importance of embracing this new perspective on family. Jonathan, however, looked increasingly uncomfortable. "And what will people say?" he asked, looking directly at Eliza. "You've noticed how they treat Amara. Imagine what it will be like when they hear this story. Are you willing to expose your daughters to more judgment?" His words cut deep, but Eliza was unfazed. "They already face this, Jonathan. And what will make them strong is knowing that they have a rich story full of struggle and love behind them." As the discussion continued, Martha brought up an important point. "We're not asking everyone to accept this right away," she said. "But we need to start talking about this. The truth always finds a way to emerge. And when it does, I want us to be prepared to honor the memory of Evelyn and Joseph." Martha's words seemed to bring some calm to the environment, but Jonathan was still visibly uncomfortable. After dinner, as everyone was getting ready to leave, Ruth approached Eliza. "You were brave today," she said. "It's not easy to face family resistance, but I'm proud of you." Eliza thanked her, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. Although the night was difficult, she knew she had taken an important step in bringing to light a story that could no longer be ignored. Before going to sleep, Eliza looked at Lillian and Amara, who were sleeping side by side in the crib. The physical differences between them were evident, but Eliza now saw something much bigger. The two were equal parts of a lineage that transcended barriers and prejudices. "You have so much to teach the world," she whispered, as she caressed each of their faces. For Eliza, the future was uncertain, but her determination to embrace all facets of her family history was unwavering. Over time, Eliza and Martha decided to strengthen ties with the Hargrove community in Marshfield. And Hargrove, who had become an indispensable ally, suggested that they attend a Hargrove family reunion the following month. "It's an opportunity for you to understand more about who we are," said and, on the phone with Martha, "and maybe start building bridges that were destroyed a long time ago." Eliza was excited, but also nervous. "What if they don't accept us?" he asked Martha, as they prepared for the trip. "Do you think they will see us as intruders?" Martha held her daughter's hand and replied, "They've already accepted us, Eliza, and gave us a warm welcome, and I believe the rest of the family will see this as a chance for reconciliation." The gathering took place in a Marshfield community park, where dozens of members of the Hargrove family gathered to celebrate their story. There were children running around, adults chatting excitedly, and tables full of traditional dishes. Eliza felt a mix of intimidation and curiosity when she arrived with Martha, but was greeted with warm smiles. "You must be the Collins," said a man named Thomas Hargrove, who seemed to be one of the leaders of the group. "Welcome. You are as much a part of this family as anyone here." Throughout the day, Eliza and Martha heard stories about Joseph and his contributions to the community. He wasn't just a lawyer. He was a leader who fought for civil rights at a time when it put his life at risk. "He always said he didn't just want to survive, he wanted to thrive," Thomas said. "And I believe that spirit is alive in each of us." The words touched Eliza, who began to see Amara as an extension of that legacy. Lillian and Amara, even though they were little, also participated in the event. Several members of the Hargrove family were enchanted by them, especially Amara, who seemed to inherit Joseph's physical and spiritual traits. "She has the twinkle in her eye of a true Hargrove," said Anne, as she held the girl in her lap. For Eliza, that moment was validation that her decision to seek the truth was the right choice. While talking to family members, Eliza realized something that surprised her. Many of them faced similar challenges to the ones she feared for Amara. "Being different is not easy," said a woman named Rachel, who grew up facing prejudice. "But with a strong family by your side, you can overcome anything. Amara is lucky to have you as a mother." Rachel's words strengthened Eliza's resolve to create an environment of love and acceptance for her daughters. At the end of the day, Anne proposed a symbolic gesture. "Let's take a family photo," she suggested, as everyone gathered around. Eliza, Martha, Lillian, and Amara were positioned in the center, alongside Anne and other members of the Hargrove family. The photographer captured the moment, which symbolized not only the union of the two families, but also the beginning of a new chapter in their shared history. Upon returning home, Eliza and Martha reflected on the day. "This was more than a family gathering," Eliza said. "It was a lesson in resilience and love." Martha agreed. "We are building something that transcends generations. And this is just the beginning." For both, the bond with the Hargroves was more than a discovery. It was an opportunity to create a legacy of unity and understanding for future generations. With the story of the connection between the Collins and the Hargroves gaining ground within the family, it didn't take long for the news to spread throughout the Savannah community. Although Eliza and Martha had planned to keep the story restricted to the family circle, a post made by a distant relative of Jonathan on a social network brought the revelation to the public. The image of Evelyn and Joseph together, accompanied by a brief description of the forbidden romance, quickly went viral. "The Collins have roots they themselves were unaware of," the caption read. The impact was immediate. Eliza began receiving messages and calls from friends and acquaintances, some expressing support, others expressing curiosity or, in some cases, prejudice. "Is it true that your daughter is a Hargrove?" asked a neighbor, as she looked at Amara playing in the garden. "She's my daughter, period," replied Eliza, trying to hide her irritation. However, these interactions made it clear that not everyone was ready to accept the story without prejudice. Martha, in turn, faced criticism from some family members who didn't agree with her decision to dredge up the past. "You exposed our family to unnecessary judgment," Jonathan said in a tense meeting. "People are going to treat us differently now." Martha, however, stood firm. "The truth is not something to be hidden, Jonathan. It is something to be faced and, more importantly, to be embraced. Our roots are part of who we are, whether you like it or not." While facing the repercussions, Eliza realized that the situation also affected Lillian and Amara. Although they were still too young to understand the complexity of the events, their interactions with other children at the local park began to change. Some mothers moved their children away from Amara, while others showed exaggerated curiosity, asking to touch her hair or openly comparing her to Lillian. Eliza began to feel the weight of responsibility to protect her daughters from a world that still insisted on dividing them. However, there were also moments of genuine support. Claire, a close friend of Eliza, organized a small gathering with other mothers who sympathized with the situation. "We're here for you," said Claire, as she served tea in the garden. What you are facing is something that many families face in silence. But you are being brave enough to make space for a conversation that needs to happen. Claire's words strengthened Eliza, who realized she was not alone on this journey. The situation also caught the attention of influential figures in the city. A local journalist, Marcus Lane, contacted Martha to write an article about the story of Evelyn and Joseph. This is a story that can help many people understand the impact of racism and interracial relationships in our history, he said. Although hesitant, Martha agreed, as long as the focus was on the strength and resilience of both families. The story was published in the local newspaper and received widespread attention. Titled Forbidden Love, The Shared Roots of Two Families in Savannah, the article told the story of Evelyn and Joseph with sensitivity and respect. It also highlighted twins Lillian and Amara as symbols of the union of two lineages that, despite challenges, were working to build a more inclusive future. For Eliza, the article brought a mix of pride and vulnerability, but she knew it was an important step in opening dialogue. Despite the criticism and challenges, Eliza and Martha realized that the impact was generating positive changes. Conversations about identity, racism, and acceptance began to gain ground in the community, and many families reached out to Eliza to share similar stories or to offer support. For Eliza, it was a reminder that although the journey was difficult, it was worth it. Over time, Eliza and Martha decided to turn challenges into opportunities to educate and inspire others. Together, they started a community project called United Roots, focused on preserving and celebrating the shared history between different families and cultures in Savannah. We want to create a space where stories like ours can be told, understood, and valued, explained Eliza during the project launch event. The project started modestly, with monthly meetings at a community library, but quickly gained momentum. And Hargrove and other members of the Hargrove family joined the initiative, bringing stories and artifacts that highlighted their community's rich heritage. The past can be painful, and said during one of the meetings, but it is by looking at him that we find the strength to build a better future. Lillian and Amara also became an important part of the project, even though they were still too young to fully understand its importance. Eliza made a point of taking them to all the events, where the girls played with children from different backgrounds. For Eliza, these interactions were a symbol of what she hoped to achieve, a world where differences were celebrated rather than divided. The project also attracted the attention of local schools, who began incorporating the story of Evelyn and Joseph into their history classes. Teachers used the narrative as an example of how love and courage can resist social and cultural barriers. Martha, who has always valued education, was thrilled to see her family's history used as a learning tool. "This is more than I could have dreamed of," she said, while visiting a classroom where children were discussing the story. However, not everything was easy. Jonathan remained skeptical of the project and frequently expressed his concerns about how it might affect the family's image. "You're making this too public," he told Eliza over dinner. "Not everyone will react positively." Eliza, however, was prepared to deal with resistance. "The truth needs to be told, Jonathan. And if some people don't accept it, that's a reflection on them, not on us." As the project grew, Eliza began planning a permanent exhibit in Savannah dedicated to telling the story of the Collins and Hargrove families. She worked with local historians and artists to create an interactive space that combined art, history, and technology. "I want this place to be a point of connection," she said. "A place where people can learn about the past and be inspired to build a better future." The opening of the exhibition, called Echoes to Rosewood, was a landmark event for the city. People from different communities attended, including descendants of other families who had faced similar stories of forbidden love and segregation. The opening speech was given by Eliza, who spoke about the importance of embracing all parts of who we are. "This exhibition is proof that our stories, however complex they may be, have the power to unite us," she said, moving. As Eliza looked out at the crowds visiting the exhibit, she saw Lillian and Amara running hand in hand between the interactive panels. For her, that was the greatest symbol of success. Two girls, different in appearance, but united by a rich story full of meaning. "They are the future," thought Eliza. "And it's because of them that it's all worth it." With the success of the project United Roots and the exhibition Echoes to Rosewood, Eliza began to realize the tangible impact her actions were having on the community. However, along with advances came new challenges. Some conservative voices in the city began publicly criticizing the initiative, arguing that reopening histories of segregation and racial conflict was unnecessary and divisive. An article published in a local newspaper claimed that the project was exaggerating the importance of interracial connections in the region's history. Eliza, upon reading the article, felt a mixture of frustration and determination. I knew the criticism wasn't just about the project, but about some people's resistance to confronting the past. They would rather ignore the truth than accept it, he commented to Martha, who was equally upset. But this just proves that what we're doing is important. Martha, with her usual strength, responded. Change always bothers those who prefer to live in the comfort of ignorance. The situation escalated when some parents withdrew their children from classes that used the story of Evelyn and Joseph as an example. Eliza received a call from a local teacher who explained what happened with regret. Unfortunately, some families are not yet ready for these conversations, said the teacher. Eliza was grateful for the support, but knew she needed to do something to combat prejudice more actively. Determined to face the situation, Eliza organized a public forum at the city library. He invited historians, community leaders, and members of the Collins and Hargrove families to speak about the importance of recognizing and learning from the past. The event was planned to be a space for open dialogue, where people could express their opinions and clarify doubts. Change starts with a conversation, said Eliza in the invitation that was circulated around the city. On the day of the event, the auditorium was full, with people of different ages and backgrounds. Some came to support, while others seemed more interested in questioning. Eliza opened the forum with a sincere speech. I understand that our story may be uncomfortable for some, she said, but denying who we are does not protect us. It just limits us. Today, I hope we can listen to each other and learn together. During the forum, there were moments of tension. Some people have expressed concerns about the project's impact on the city's reputation. Why do we need to revisit something that happened so long ago? Asked a man, clearly uncomfortable. And Hargrove responded firmly, because the past never really goes away. He lives in our lives, in our choices, and in the way we treat each other. Facing it is the only way to move forward. Despite the disagreements, the event also brought moments of hope. A young girl called Jasmine, who grew up facing discrimination for being from an interracial family, shared her story. Knowing that there were people like Evelyn and Joseph gives me strength, she said emotionally. They faced what seemed impossible, and that makes me believe we can do the same. Their words were met with warm applause, reaffirming the importance of Eliza and Martha's work. At the end of the forum, Eliza felt a renewal of her determination. Although he knew he couldn't change everyone's opinion, he understood that each conversation, each story shared, was a step in the right direction. Resistance is just part of the process, she told Claire, who hugged her at the end of the event. For Eliza, overcoming barriers was not just a personal mission, but a commitment to her daughters and all future generations. The years that followed were marked by progress and growth, both for the Collins-Hargrove family and the Savannah community. The exhibition Echoes to Rosewood, it has become a cultural landmark in the city, attracting visitors from across the state and even from other parts of the country. Schools began organizing field trips to the site, using it as an educational tool to teach about acceptance, diversity, and resilience. Eliza, now a respected figure in the community, frequently gave talks about the power of embracing the past to build a better future. Lillian and Amara, now 5, were beginning to understand the stories that shaped their lives. Although they were still too young to absorb all the complexity, Eliza made a point of teaching them to celebrate their differences and be proud of their heritage. During a dinner conversation, Amara asked, "Mommy, why do people say we're different?" Eliza smiled, holding her hand. "Because you are unique, my love. And that is a beautiful thing." The relationship between the Collins and Hargrove families also strengthened. Family reunions have become an annual tradition, with members of both bloodlines sharing stories, recipes, and memories. Jonathan, although initially resistant, eventually began to accept the new dynamic. During one of these meetings, he approached Eliza and said, "I was wrong to resist. You brought something special to our family. Thank you for not giving up." His words were a relief to Eliza, who had always wanted reconciliation. Martha, who had been the driving force behind the entire investigation, felt fulfilled upon seeing the fruits of her labor. "I never imagined that something I started out of personal curiosity would turn into something so big," she said, during a conversation with Anne Hargrove, and smiled and replied, "You gave your family the courage to embrace their story. This is something few people can do." The project United Roots also continued to grow, expanding into other communities beyond Savannah. Eliza has led initiatives to connect families with similar stories, creating a network of support and celebration of diversity. The impact was so significant that she received a local award for her contributions to inclusion and education. During her acceptance speech, Eliza dedicated the award to Evelyn and Joseph. They faced immense challenges, but they didn't let that erase the love they shared. This award is for them. On the twins' 7th birthday, Eliza and Caleb organized a celebration in their garden, inviting friends and family. Lillian and Amara, now aware of their uniqueness, seemed more connected than ever. "We are different, but we are the same," Amara said, as she held her sister's hand. For Eliza, those words were proof that everything they did was worth it. In the final moments of the party, while the children were playing and the adults were talking animatedly, Eliza stood back for a moment, observing the scene with a smile on her face. He felt a deep gratitude for everything he had learned, faced, and achieved. "This is the legacy I want to leave my daughters," she thought. "A world where they can be who they are, without fear or shame." For the Collins Hargrove family, the past was no longer a burden, but a source of strength. The love that began with Evelyn and Joseph had transcended generations, bringing people together and creating a future full of possibilities. Lillian and Amara would grow up knowing that they were the product of a rich and complex history, and that they had the power to shape the world around them. After all, the family's true legacy was not in hidden secrets, but in the courage to tell their stories and celebrate their roots.